Hey guys, Will here. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Fanatec Podium R300 racing wheel. So this is as the name would suggest, 300mm racing wheel. And unlike a lot of the other Fanatec wheels on the market, this is a modular design. So it's sort of constructed of a bunch of different parts that can be purchased individually as well as together as the R300 Podium pack. So we've got the R300 wheel, we've got the Clubsport button cluster pack up here, which is these buttons. We've got the Podium advanced paddle module on the back, and of course the Podium Hub as well. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to put all this together in detail, as well as taking you for a quick drive. And yeah, basically just giving you my thoughts on this wheel. So let's get going. So the first thing to understand here is that this doesn't come pre-assembled, so you will need to put it together yourself. Not too difficult to do, and of course we will run you through the process in this video. There are a couple of different configurations that are available as well. We've got the Podium version, which is what we're going to be building today. Comes with the Podium Hub and the Podium Advanced Paddle Module. There's also the Clubsport version as well, which comes with the Clubsport Universal Hub. Now you can also purchase all these individual components separately, which gives you the ability to chop and change. So I think we'll start off today with the wheel itself, because that's probably the thing that people are going to want to see first. So flip it open. All right. We've got two sets of screws in here. We've got some nice gold screws, as well as black screws too. Let's put that box out of the way. So let's have a look here. All right, so really nice leather finish. And you guys would have heard me saying recently that I actually have found myself preferring leather over the Alcantara finish now. I just find it slips a little bit nicer through the hands, feels a bit nicer without gloves on too, and doesn't have the problems associated with Alcantara with sort of wearing and you know, balling up and needing cleaning all the time, smelling and things like that either. So leather is actually my preference these days. I used to prefer Alcantara, but I've kind of changed my mind on that. So we've got a really nice gold section here as well. Let's get up nice and close on that so you can see. So they've done a really nice job of that. I've never actually seen gold leather before. And yeah, I see absolutely no quality issues there whatsoever. I mean, not that I would have expected to. And all the lines where the edge of the leather's cut are all nice and smooth. Really fine. There's no glue seepage or anything like that. It's all very, very nicely done. We've got a nice anodized brushed aluminium finish here as well. Now, interestingly, in this case, if you get up close on that logo, you can see the surface is slightly different. You can sort of see like a crosshatch pattern on there. So I believe that this has been lasered on there after the anodizing has taken place, because it doesn't have the brushed aluminium look underneath it like we've seen on some other wheels recently. So if we have a look at my Momo rim, for example, if we get up close on that, you can see the brushed aluminium look kind of continues underneath it. So what they've done is they've sort of like masked the area and then anodized over the top and then peeled whatever mask it. I don't understand the process 100%, so I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about here. But yeah, the point is the finish is a little bit different. So yeah, just an interesting little thing of note there. So we've got, you should be able to see in there, 5mm, there we go, 5mm thick aluminium as well. And it's not squishy at all, but I mean, wheels generally aren't squishy at all. So that's absolutely fine. There's very little flex there that I can tell. Obviously, we'll comment on that once we have it up on the rig properly. And if we compare directly against a 300mm genuine Momo wheel as well, there's not a whole lot of difference, honestly, in the quality here. I mean, the leather is slightly nicer on the Momo. Admittedly, this did cost almost $200 more than this wheel does on its own. So you would expect the quality would be a little bit higher. But yeah, no more flex in it. It's exactly the same amount there. The aluminium's got a slightly nicer brushed finish on it, but again, like that's nitpicking. And 5mm thick. So yeah, there's really not a huge amount of difference in the quality there. So you often see, and you can see there, that is a genuine Momo wheel, just in case you were wondering. So we'll be having another video soon with a build up of a wheel on that. If you've been following on Instagram, you would have seen a teaser a couple of days ago. One interesting thing of note now is that the Fanatec wheel is actually 500 grams lighter than the Momo wheel is. 775 grams here and 1.25 kilos here. So that is quite a significant difference between the two. And when you consider the fact that this doesn't feel any less rigid than this does, I reckon that's pretty impressive. So let's move on now to the next component. So next we have the Podium Advanced Paddle Module. Now we do have a standalone review video on this, so I'm going to skim over it pretty quickly in this video. I'll link at the top of the screen for you now to that dedicated review. But one thing that I do want to mention quickly that has changed recently, and you guys will be really happy about this, they've started shipping with 3mm thick carbon fiber now as opposed to 2mm. Now this is older stock that I have here, so this is still only 2mm that we're going to be looking at today. But the new ones that are shipping now in most places, I believe, are 3mm. They might still be selling through some of the older stock, so I can't guarantee you at this point in time when I'm making the video that you'll definitely receive 3mm thick. But yeah, I'm seeing plenty of reports of people that are receiving 3mm thick carbon now, so that is really good to hear. So we'll lift that out quickly as well. We're going to be using the larger shifters, obviously, with this build. And then inside here, we have the modules themselves. So again, check out the other video if you want to see more details on this, but essentially the way this works is we've got a Hall effect sensor here for the analog axis. And these can be configured to be a handbrake and throttle, a dual stage clutch, as well as just a randomly assigned function to be whatever you want it to be as well. So that is cool. And then we've got our magnetic switches here as well. So neodymium magnets in the back here. And again, check out the detail in the other video if you want to see more, but these are little micro switches. So they're not Hall sensors or anything like that. And you can see just in there, the little switch that activates. So we'll pop both of those out. We're going to be using the two larger paddles as well as these guys. Obviously these paddles are for when you're using a formula style wheel. And then we do have some mounting hardware in here as well. So some little screws and some Allen keys, which all come with the kit. All right, Podium Hub time. Pop this guy out. Here we go. There is a quick start guide in there as well that goes through all the details of how everything goes together. But I've done this before, so for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to skim through it and show you how to do it. But this is a really nice piece of kit. So it's got that beautiful gold anodized that matches what we have on the other bits and pieces. So it all goes together really nicely. Pop the cover off to plug everything in. We'll show you that in just a moment. So we've got the 70mm stud pattern around the outside and then 50mm on the inside as well. So it's compatible with most aftermarket wheels. Mounting points on the side here for our shifters, and then the standard Fanatec quick release on the back here. There's also a USB-C port on the bottom here too. Now this has also created quite a bit of confusion. This isn't a generic USB-C port that you can use to connect just anything. It is a proprietary protocol that they're using. So the button module Endurance connects via this. Future accessories as well will plug into this as well, but you can't just plug anything you want in here and have it recognized by the PC. So there's just one more thing to look at now before we get into the assembly, and that is the button cluster pack. So these are essentially the same little buttons that you get with the Universal Hub. So a very simple little package here. Pop them out. And there are a couple of little packets of bits and pieces in here as well that are going to be important. So we'll grab those too. There we are. We'll set that box out of the way for now. And let's just quickly go through this. So very simple design here. You can see the little screw holes that we would use for mounting on the Xbox Universal Hub in some cases, as well as a little arm here, which is going to mount. So look, there's nothing particularly remarkable here. They're buttons, they do button things. They've got a decent tactile feel to them. They're a little bit rattly. You know, the same quality as what we have on most of the Fanatec wheels. So if you own any other Fanatec wheels that have these same style concave buttons, then these are going to feel exactly the same. A decent click. Maybe about 1mm of throw there when we push the button in. and we get 6 of them, 3 on either side. So what's going to happen here, these are going to mount on the hub like so in any position that we want to choose. So we'll get it into a final position once we get the wheel mounted. And then we also need to make sure that we put one of these little spaces on each of the screw holes that isn't occupied by these. So we're going to be putting one there, 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 and there. And that's really important because essentially what's happening is these buttons are going to be sandwiched between the back of the wheel and the face of the mount. So if we don't include those, we're going to introduce a whole ton of flex, and we definitely don't want flex. So let's get to putting all this together. So the easiest place to start, in my opinion, is by installing the paddles onto the shifter modules, and then we'll put the shifter modules onto the Podium Hub. So what we want to do here is a couple of different configurations which are available, and we've actually got these sitting backwards on the table at the moment. They'd be like that with the analog axis pulling towards you and the shifters, or switches I should say, pulling towards you as well. So we'll sit that down there. Now there are some little tapers that you can see on these paddles. So what we want to make sure we're doing is screwing in from that direction, not from the back where there's no taper. So what you want to do is put your shifter paddles on the front surface, and then we want to mount this one on the opposing side, but we don't want to put that taper on the wrong side. So we actually want to swap these over and then mount it on this side. So shifter goes on this side, secondary paddle goes on this side. Now we also do in the packet have some little standoffs as well. Let's just tear this packet open quickly. So we've got the longer screws, which are used to affix the paddle modules to the Podium Hub. We've got these little aluminium spacers here as well, should we want to adjust the reach of the paddles. Then we've got shorter screws for if we're not using those spacers, and longer screws for if we are using the spacers. So all the previous videos, I've not used the spacers. So this time around, I might put them on just to see what kind of a difference they make. So let's get that done now. And get our top pieces of carbon. Remembering again, we want to make sure the taper is on the outside. So shorter screws. This one's a lot easier because you don't have to hold those spacers in position either, but you can see that the Allen key keeps on trying to jump across onto the magnet. So it's still a little bit tricky. There you go, there goes the screw. So you will be fidgeting around with this for a little while, I won't lie. And then we just need to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So with all the paddles installed, now we need to install the shifters onto the paddle module using the included screws that came with the paddles. So one on either side, very simple, very self-explanatory. Just want to make sure you put the negative on the negative and the positive on the positive. Or the upshift on the upshift and the downshift on the downshift, I should say. And then again, using the included Allen key, tighten it down into position. Now remember, these are screwing into aluminium, so you don't want to over tighten them. You will strip the threads out if you try to do them up too tight. You just need to cinch them up, and that should do. So repeat exactly the same process on the other side as well. And we're good to move on to the electronics. All right, on to the electronics. So all we need here is the included Allen key that came with the Podium Hub. We're going to undo the 3 little screws on the top here. It's just so much easier when I'm not trying to hold things in the same position for recording. So you don't need to take them all the way out. You can just loosen them off to the point where they're not catching and then just leave them in the lid so you don't lose them. And then just lift the cap out. So inside we have the brains of the operation. The only things we need to worry about here are the left and right connections here, which we're going to be plugging our Podium paddle module into, and the left and right connections here, which are going to be used for our buttons. So these little connections here are directional. So let me just get the camera adjusted for you. So you can see there is a little plastic tab on the left-hand side. So the easiest way to figure this out is when the little contacts are visible. So you can see they're not visible on this side, they are visible on this side. That goes towards the outside. So whatever you do, do not try to force it in the wrong way because you will cause problems. So just slips in and pushes down like that. Exactly the same thing for the other side as well. So contacts are facing that way towards the outside. So next up, we're going to be installing our buttons. Now these have the same little connections again. So you can see the left and right connections there, and we want to face the contacts towards the bottom of the wheel this time. So they are keyed. They will only go in one direction. I'll show you those connections again quickly. So the little tab is going to go towards the bottom. So the contacts are facing the bottom of the button module, or the Podium Hub, I should say. So I'm going to spin this around so it's a little bit easier to see there. This is going to be our left-hand side. So we're going to plug it in with the little teeth facing the bottom like that. So excuse fingers again, sorry, it's a bit hard to plug it in and let you see. But there we go, pop it in, that's one. And two. All good. So flip it around again. And now we need to deal with the cable spaghetti. So the cap is going to go back on the top like that. But what we want to make sure that we're not doing is interfering with these posts at all, because obviously if the cable is in the way there, then it's going to get pinched and we're not going to be able to screw this back down again. So you can see there's some little channels cut out in the plastic here. So we've got one on this side, so it's going to sit something like that. One on this side. So that's going to sit in there like that. And that'll allow us to run those two through. And then the buttons can run through these little holes in the top. So that one and this one. So it is a little bit fiddly. We can see there, we've lined everything up. Push it down. So we want to try and have as little excess cable as we possibly can on both. And then those are going to end up sitting up like this. So we want to leave a little bit of slack there on these ones just so we can move things around when we want to, and then we can tuck it in a little later on. So let's secure these back down now with our Allen key that was provided. Now this is screwing into plastic, so you just want to be really careful that you're not cross-threading or that you're not over-tightening as well, because if you do over-tighten, you will strip the threads out and then you'll be in all sorts of trouble. So it doesn't need to be super, super tight, just tight enough that it's not going to move. And just be really careful that you're not pinching any of your cables here. Make sure you've got plenty of slack there, nothing's being snagged. So all that's left to do now is just mount the wheel. Now, as I mentioned before, we do have those little spacers, and we will be needing to use these in all the locations where the buttons aren't mounted. So I'm just going to open this packet up quickly now. And there we go. So we're going to put one on the top, the bottom, and we are using the 70mm stud pattern here, not the 50. There and there. And then rather than trying to sort of fidget and get these in and sandwich down, what I like to do is actually put the wheel on, get it lined up with as many holes as we can there without moving the washers. And then just loosely fit. And I like to go in a cross pattern just from my automotive days. So I always go diagonally across. Like so. And that's going to stop those washers from slipping out when we then flip it up and install our button. So we don't want to tighten these down just yet, just finger tight. Then that gives us enough room that we can flip it around. And now it's a simple case of just sliding this into the position that we want it. So about there's good. And then bolt through. So before we tighten everything down, let me just quickly show you the range of movement that we have here, or the range of adjustability we have. So we can go up and down, we can go left and right. And obviously remember, your thumbs are going to be here, so you don't want to be interfering with those. You want to have enough room that you can get your thumbs out if you need to. So I think somewhere around here where we can reach them relatively easily is probably pretty good. So once you're happy with the placement, just grab a 3mm Allen key. And this is the only time I actually needed to use tools that weren't included in the kit. There wasn't a 3mm Allen key that came with the wheel, unfortunately. So you will need to have one of those. Just tighten down the bolts. So they are tapered, so they will sort of align themselves. Again, we sort of like to semi-tighten in a cross pattern just to sort of make sure everything falls into alignment correctly. Now I'm going to tighten these two last, just so I can be sure that I've got everything in the position that I want it to. And now we should be good to tighten down the rest of the way. Now these screws are quite a soft metal, so you just want to be really careful when you're tightening them that you don't strip them by accident. They are quite small little heads on there at 3mm, so you do just want to be mindful of that. And there we go. One fully assembled Podium R300. So my conclusions on the Podium R300 wheel from Fanatec. So there are a few positives and a few negatives here. We'll start off with the positives. First of all, it is an extremely versatile wheel. So at 300mm diameter, you'll find that you can use this quite comfortably to drive a large variety of different cars. So as you can see behind me, I've got a large selection of different wheels. Most GT wheels that I own are somewhere around the sort of 310 to 330mm diameter, and the Formula style wheels on my right hand side are between about 270 and 290mm. But I find 300mm is a really good sweet spot between the two. And as I showed you before, I did just purchase that Momo wheel as well, which is going to sort of be my all-rounder wheel for when I'm using my SimiCube 2 Ultimate wheelbase. Now, we'll just mention that because it is a D-shaped wheel, it's not quite so suitable for things like drifting and rally style driving, where you need to be able to slip the wheel through your hands comfortably and be able to sort of grab onto it at any spot. You'll find that the D shape does make that a little bit difficult. So it might not be the ideal wheel for rally and drift style driving, but if you're doing more road style driving and swapping between GT and Formula style wheels all the time, then this is a good option. I know that one of the questions that pops up a lot online is it better to buy one high quality wheel that's sort of an all-rounder, or better to get a couple of cheaper wheels that suit different driving styles so you can swap and change between them? And you know, I really do feel like this hits a good spot in between the two if you're the sort of person that wants just one high quality wheel. And it is a really nice high quality wheel. There's no issues at all with flex in the rim itself. Obviously, we do still have that little bit of flex in the quick release that we've covered before in our videos, and I'll put a link down in the description below to where you can explore that in a little bit more detail. But you know, the fit and finish and everything is really nice. I really love the gold highlights everywhere, and overall it just feels and looks like a really nice, expensive piece of kit that, you know, again, like I've said with a few things that we reviewed lately, it's one of those things that, you know, you look at it on your shelf or you look at it on your rig, and it's just something that you're always going to admire. You'll also find that the buttons on the far right and the far left are really easy to reach as well. So if you're doing things like activating your pit limiter, push to torque, or, you know, DRS, something like that, then those are nice and comfortable and easy to reach with your thumbs. So ergonomically, it is really good. It would be nice to maybe have a little bit more of a cutout shape around here, like what we have with the Cube Controls wheel, for example. The OMP wheel that we have on here has got a little bit more of an ergonomic shape around here that makes it a little bit more comfortable for your thumbs. Now, a lot of people are going to say you shouldn't be wrapping your thumbs around the wheel anyway, but, you know, I do slightly prefer the shape of the OMP wheel. Obviously, that is a lot more expensive than this one is, though. But overall, ergonomically and quality-wise, there's really no issues. The stitching is all really nice, high quality. And to be honest with you, it looks every bit as good as the carbon fiber and leather M2 steering wheel that I had in my BMW M235i a couple of years ago, which cost thousands of dollars. So yeah, this is, you know, for the money, I think that it is really good quality-wise. But I do have a few little gripes with this wheel in terms of functionality. So I'm just going to bring across my cheat sheet here now in front of me. I've put together a little bit of a spreadsheet with pricing and stuff that we can go through here just to make this a little bit clearer. So The Podium R300 wheel in the combination that we have here, or the package that we have here in front of us, remembering again that it is a modular design, so you can change components to your preference as you desire. So the Podium R300 package is $799.90. Now, if you were to price up all the individual components on this wheel, it comes to $909.60. Now, for that price, the major issue that I have is the inability to access the tuning menu. That, in my opinion, is the main draw card for the Fanatec ecosystem. You know, it's something that is so convenient. It allows you to jump in and change settings on the fly without having to Alt-Tab out of your game. And that's something that we've covered many times in our reviews of things like the DD1, DD2 wheelbases, the Porsche 911 GT3R wheel as well. And, you know, that is something that I really miss having on this wheel. Now, once you've got all your settings dialed in, you don't find you do have to go in there and tune things too often. But when you're switching between profiles and things like that, when you're changing cars, you know, I just feel like for the money, there really should be a way to access the tuning menu. It's also worth noting as well that in this configuration, this wheel is only PC compatible. You do have to add something like the button module Endurance, which will give you PS4 compatibility. Unfortunately, there is no Xbox compatibility on the Podium R300 at all, unless you buy the Clubsport version that comes with the Universal Hub for Xbox One instead. Now, let's just talk about those various different options in a little bit more detail here. So obviously the button module Endurance is I wouldn't say it's an essential upgrade, but you know, it's definitely going to give you that additional functionality that's lacking on the configuration that we're reviewing here today. So this gives you, you know, funky switches, analog axes, multi-position switches, toggle switches, a whole bunch of extra buttons, rev lights, flag lights, ability to access the tuning menu, and of course the OLED display as well for telemetry and, you know, seeing what's going on in your tuning menu, things like that. So this really does add a whole lot of additional functionality on top of the PS4 compatibility too. Now, as I said before, this is a quite expensive upgrade. So if we have a look at it here, it is $299.90 to add this on top. Now, obviously, if you were to add this, you would no longer need the Clubsport button cluster pack, and that is valued at $49.90. But because of the way the pricing works on this, as I said before, if you price up all the individual components of the wheel, it comes to $909.60, which is about, what is it, $110 more, just under $110 more than buying the wheel as a package. So even if you were to remove that button cluster pack and buy the button module instead, you're still paying a lot more. So it makes more sense to just buy the wheel and then buy the cluster pack on top. But then we also need to consider the Porsche 911 GT3R wheel. So this is a 320 millimeter wheel, so a little bit less versatile. But if we'll just move this aside here as well. But if we have a look at the pricing of that wheel is $990.90. So it's $200 more than the Podium R300 wheel. So it is significantly more money, but it really does offer a whole lot more in terms of functionality. Now, just for comparison reasons here, if we were to buy the Podium R300 package and then upgrade it to the button module as well, that comes to $1,099.80. So pretty much $100 exactly more expensive than the Porsche wheel. So at that point, it kind of starts to make more sense to just buy the Porsche wheel, I think. The only downside to that is that it is a little less versatile simply because it is 320 millimeter diameter instead of 300. So it's a little less comfortable to drive Formula style cars. But let's set this guy back aside for now. So really, there's a couple of options here. There's a couple of things that we can explore. So the other option that we have here is to go with the Clubsport version of the R300 package instead of the Podium. That gives you the Universal Hub for Xbox One, obviously giving you Xbox compatibility, as well as the ability to access the tuning menu through the buttons on the top of the module and a whole bunch of extra buttons as well as a rotary encoder. Now, the disadvantages of doing that are that you end up with the Clubsport shifters, which aren't anywhere near as good as either the Clubsport magnetic paddle module, which we reviewed recently. We actually did a bit of a comparison between the Universal Hub shifters and the magnetic shifters in that video. So I'll link that down in the description below as well as above my head for you right now. Yeah, so those shifters definitely aren't anywhere near as nice as the advanced paddle module or the Clubsport shifters, the magnetic shifters. But it also just doesn't look anywhere near as nice as the Podium Hub. It just really, you know, it takes away from that overall fit and finish of the product. So I much prefer the look of the Podium Hub despite its more limited functionality. Now, you can, of course, upgrade the Universal Hub with either the Clubsport magnetic paddle module or the advanced paddle module, but that is going to add additional cost as well. And if we use the advanced paddle module as an example, if we price up the Clubsport R300 package with the advanced paddle module, it comes in at $999.80. cents, which again is pretty much exactly the same. It's 10 cents less than the Porsche 911 GT3R wheel. So at that point, again, you know, you're better off buying the Porsche wheel than going down that road. I think the ideal solution here would be a button module that doesn't have the OLED display. For those who have a DD1 or a DD2, this isn't really essential because you've got the OLED display on the unit anyway. And, you know, it's one of those things that's nice to have. It's, you know, it's not going to make you a faster driver. And I think that, you know, having that additional functionality, not only being able to access the tuning menu, but just the extra buttons, the toggle switches, the dials, and, you know, particularly the funky switch, which makes it so much easier to navigate menus and things like that within a game. You know, if they were to do a cheaper version of this, maybe like $100 or $150 version that did away with that OLED display, but gave you all that other additional functionality that's lacking on this, then I really think they'd be onto a winner. But my honest opinion is that for the $799.90 that this wheel costs, something like that really should be included. For that kind of price, you really shouldn't be skimping on that much functionality. I just don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense. So look, I mean, I guess in conclusion, if you're after a wheel that, you know, looks really nice, does the job well, and is a more minimalistic sort of design in terms of buttons, then yeah, this is a really fantastic option. But for the price, I really do think that you need to consider whether you're going to miss those functions that are missing on the R300 wheels. So there you go, guys. Let's push that laptop aside again. So, I mean, it is a really, really nice wheel. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's fantastic to drive with. And, you know, I really do like the overall design of the wheel. I just feel like for the money, there are some better options out there that are a little bit cheaper. I feel like at this price point, they just could have done better than this cluster pack. Something in between the cluster pack and the endurance button module, I think would have been absolutely ideal. So there you go, guys. That is the Podium R300 wheel from Fanatec. So if you do want to pick one of these up or anything else that you've seen in these videos, there are some links down in the description below. We've got some discount links for some other brands down there as well. So make sure you check those out. And yeah, a small percentage of the profits from some of those sales comes back to helping out the channel, which is what keeps us running these days. So thank you so much for your support there. It really does mean the world to us. So if you've enjoyed the video and found it useful, please do leave a thumbs up. Make sure that you're subscribed, hit the notification bell too so you don't miss future videos. Only about 30% of the people that are watching these videos are subscribed to the channel, and subscribing helps tell the YouTube algorithm that you're finding this content useful and helps to show it to other people as well so we can help out the sim racing community. So thank you so much for the support there. But above all, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you again soon. Bye.